Yeah, that's it. Okay, we will speak about crossing cultures, and many of you have experience in that already. Actually, we have 2 sessions on this, and there are not so many things I would like to teach you. Only a few things, actually, a few principles. So hopefully after those 2 sessions you will remember the few principles. But here is what we will look at as we go through these 2 sessions. We will have a break in the middle, depending on you guys, how quick you are, but we will have at least a 10-minute break. So principles for healthy cross-cultural relationships. We will look at just briefly on cross-cultural leadership. We will focus on how we react to other cultures, and we will identify sources of cultural challenges. So that's what we will cover in these 2 sessions. And Ari told me before starting the session that now is already time is there. I said that we still have 10 seconds left, right, to start. And we are now in a very time-oriented culture. Now, how is Costa Rica? You are.
Yeah, it's changed right now because of the relationship with the state.
Okay.
But yeah, it's event is important.
Yeah.
Not that.
Yeah. So, and I come from also a time-oriented culture, but one of the joys I have teaching in African culture is that you know that when you teach, if something you feel like, okay, people are responding well now, and we can actually go deeper in this, no one is concerned about time. So you can focus on the issue you have in front of you for as long as you want. And it gives a lot of joy to be able to do that, and not having always to look at your watch and say, okay, I have to end this session, so we need to move on. So every culture has, any aspect has advantages and disadvantages. We all communicate cross-culturally on a regular basis. And we communicate more cross-culturally today than ever before in history. So what do you think? Do you think that that causes us to understand each other better today? Is there more cross-cultural understanding today than before, or what do you think? Will you understand people from other cultures better than we did before?
I think there's a greater sensitivity.
Greater sensitivity to other cultures today. Yeah.
But there's a level of where all of culture is good.
Yeah.
There's kind of acceptance, which I don't think is really true. There's elements of my culture that need to be redeemed.
Yeah.
But there's just, we should accept everything because it's culture.
Yeah. So that's more relativism. You say everything is equally good, right? Yeah. Yeah. But
taking everything wholesale without actually thinking through the biblical implication of it.
Yeah. Just say this, yeah. When you communicate with someone from totally different culture today, with your understanding, you think our understanding today is increased compared to previously? I think probably it has, because we communicate more. But there are two elements I want us to be, or 2 trends I want us to be aware of. And this is from a book written by Kludeman. It's called Leading Across Cultures. And he says, while externals of clothing, food, music, transportation, and the internet are changing and making the world more homogeneous, deep culture values seem to be even more stable and enduring. Globalization might make us look more alike on the outside, but localization reinforces the deepest inner being of our identities. So in today's world, when we look the same, I can probably dress like this everywhere in the world, and it will be accepted, right? And you can dress like that, and it will be accepted. So we look more alike on the outside, and the culture is becoming like, it looks the same, right? All over the world. But at the same time, in our age, people are in our time, people are seeking for identity and for roots. And then they tend to seek down in their own cultural, what was there in history. And it actually brings us more apart from each other than before, because it's like, what are my roots? What is my identity in this world where everything looks the same? Do you agree to this? Yeah. And then you end up with people acting differently. And in Norway, for instance, we always drink black coffee. How many of you drink black coffee? You do too, yeah. Quite many here. You know, many places in the world, they don't understand that. But here is the reason why we do it in Norway. Here is what we look like after coffee. So, and here is before coffee. As you can see, we really need it. It's like, it gives us life in the morning. Life and order. Okay, we have all of us actually training in communicating with people. It might be difficult to understand from we're small. And here is a model. It's like a picture modeling a woman. And this is scary stuff, of course, when you go into gender issues. But here is a picture showing as a model of a woman, right? Here, you see it here. It's pretty complicated, right? You men here, you agree? It can be complicated, right? Well, you women, you agree too? It can be complicated, right? And so here, I have a model of a man too. It looks like this. It's on and off. It's very simple. Do you agree? Yeah, it's a good model, right?
This one.
So yeah, we've tried this cross-gender communication from we're small, right? And it has not always been easy, and we try it also in our marriages, and it's not always easy because we think so differently. But it gives us good training in communicating also cross-culturally. Here is a definition of culture. A culture is an integrated system of learned behavior patterns that are characteristic of members of any given society. Was it complicated? Definitions are very often a bit complicated. This is easy. Is it easy to understand? So, integrated system of learned behavior patterns that are characteristic of the members of any given society. And what I want us to take away from this slide is that our culture is something we have learned. Something you've learned. Right? And it feels natural for you. You come from Costa Rica. You have learned to live as they do in Costa Rica. I come from Norway. It's different, right? And it's different. What feels natural for me and for you is different. If you move to Norway, you would feel like we do things in a natural way. Some things, right? But since you have learned and I've learned, it means that we can also unlearn things and we can relearn. And that's what you do when you move to a new culture. You have to try at least to unlearn what feels to be natural for you and then try to relearn how they do things the way you are. And we learn the patterns that are characteristic of the members of a given society. And of course you have individual differences. Like in the US, what is the American culture? Is it a bragging culture? Well, what is it? What is it? What is the Canadian culture? The Canadian culture is very much defining yourself as not being US, right? It's like you're not US. You see Canadians, it's very easy to identify Canadians traveling because they always have this Canadian flag. And it's just to say, I'm not from US. I speak English, my accent sounds maybe like American. I'm not from the US. I love meeting Canadians traveling because I have some standard questions I ask. And it always gives us a good communication. I say, so you're Canadian, you see the flag, right? So you're Canadian. Yeah, I'm Canadian. So I say, I guess you've been a lot to Tim Hortons. Tim Hortons. You know, are you familiar with Tim Hortons? Yeah, you have that in the US too. I said, yeah. There is actually some Tim Hortons in the US. I saw it. Yeah, it is a coffee shop, coffee chain, and it's very much Canadian, very very much. So immediately they start asking, or thinking like, how do you know that he's from Norway? And then I asked, so where are you from in Canada? And they mentioned this place that I've never heard about. It's like probably a small place. And then I look at them and I say, wow, oh, isn't that very close to the US border? And 95% of Canadians live very close to the US border, so it's a safe question. Isn't that very close to the US border? How did you know that? How do you know my place? So you have some basic information, and then it starts the conversation, and they wonder, how much does he actually know about my little tiny community back home, right? It's like Tyrone, like they say, I'm from Tyrone. And then immediately you say, well, isn't that close to Atlanta? Well, here you would have to have some extra information. But with Canadians, isn't that close to the US border? Yes, it is. How did you know? But then what is a Canadian? What is a US person? What is a Norwegian person? What is a Costa Rican? And you have individual differences, right? But still we can identify some common traits. Well, what is a German? What is a Dutch person? We have some people with Dutch roots here. Yeah, you have. Yeah, you have. I struggle a little bit with Dutch people, actually, because they're so direct communicating. You agree?
Yeah.
It's the most direct communicating culture in the whole world. And even Norwegians, we are direct communicating, but we get offended by Dutch people. So I struggle collaborating with them, because I get offended. But are all Dutch people like that? Probably not. But still, you can apply it to that nation. What is a US? What is typically US? What is it? We're number one, right? Maybe like you have this feeling of being number one. Dial country code 1, and you get to the US because we're number one. You get to Canada as well. I think it's the same, isn't it? It's one for Canada.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We did it first.
Well, you did it first, yeah.
They also want to do everything different to the rest of the world.
Yeah,
Like in
yeah.
the measurements and everything.
Yeah. That's
Against
also
everybody else.
very complicated. Yeah. So, but we can see that even if you have individual differences, and you probably have, I come from a city where people they say that we're bragging and we're talking a lot. And no one from my city, Bergen, would be a shy person. But we have shy people from Bergen. So they don't fit with that picture. And it's the same from a nation, right? But still you can say, well, people from Bergen are typically like that, right? So it's a characteristic of the members in that society. Okay, I do agree to this. God is at work in every culture. Do you agree to it? Yeah? That's amazing. If you agree to that. God is at work in every culture. Does it mean that, let's say now you come to India and you want to reach the Hindus, and I know you have the Brahmins, and you want to reach them, and then is God at work there in their Brahmin culture? Is he at work there among devout Hindu people? Yes. Is he?
He must be.
He must be. Yeah. And if we agree to this, it gives us a very good attitude when we enter a new culture, because then we can always look for how is God working in this culture? What has God placed in this culture? And it can show us more of the fullness of who God is, because he has created the different cultures, and we can enjoy that cultural diversity. It's a totally different attitude than if you come and say, well, in this Muslim culture, it's kind of so impacted by Islam, which is a demonic religion, right? So it's like nothing here is right. Everything is pagan, and I have to proclaim the truth. No, we don't come like that. But we can look for what has God created in your culture? What has God created here? And we can affirm that. Even like if you talk to a Muslim, I can see the passion you have for God. I think that's something God has put on your heart. And then you can start your communication from there. Instead of starting by saying, I think you Muslims, you haven't realized that Jesus is the Son of God. Right? It's a different starting point. It doesn't lead anywhere. It doesn't lead anywhere. So God is at work in every culture. Here's the next one, and then we come to the measurement. It's like, and Satan is also at work in every culture. And as I put the illustration here, we have the godly way of measuring distances. It's called meters. And then we have the other way. That's used somewhere in the world. That's a joke. But Satan is also at work in every culture. Do you agree to that? Is he at work in every culture? Oh, you agree to it? Is he at work even in your church culture?
Unfortunately.
Unfortunately, yes, unfortunately. So it means that even if you come from nations that have been predominantly Christian, like my nation, US, same thing, right? We don't carry with us God, 100% God from culture, and we don't come to a culture that has been formed by Satan alone. Right? It's not like that. We come from a culture where you can find that God is at work, and we go to a culture where God is also at work. We come from a culture where Satan is at work, and we go to a culture where Satan is at work. Is it right? And we can identify what God has placed there, and we can affirm it. So in this situation, neither ethnocentrism, meaning that my culture is superior to others, it doesn't work. It's not. It doesn't give the answers, and neither does cultural relativism, saying that all cultures are equally good. It's not like that. No, we need a compass, a map that helps us more than that. And here is one principle that I hope we can take away from this session. Should actually say principle here, not paradox. But where clear biblical principles contradict culture values, the Bible takes precedence. So now you come to a new culture, and there are many things in that culture that are created by God, and there are things in that culture that are not in accordance with the will of God. Right? So you come there and you wonder, how should I maneuver in this culture? And then the principle is where clear biblical principles contradict culture values, the Bible takes precedence. Then you follow the Bible. Is it understandable? So, what is the clear biblical principle? Just ask that. What is the biblical principle here in this situation? So, people are asking me to pay a bribe to get a telephone line or to get a cell phone, a SIM card. They ask me to pay a bribe. Is there a clear biblical principle in this situation? If it is, even if it's common in that culture to pay a bribe, and you find that there is a clear biblical principle saying you shouldn't pay bribes, you follow the Bible. Is it clear? But find that biblical principle, because it's so easy for us to say that what we have been taught in the church, that's what the Bible says. But very often it isn't like that. It's like we have our church culture that is partly biblical and partly not so biblical. It can still be good, but it doesn't necessarily refer to a biblical principle. And we need to know the Bible. So you have this situation now. Could use examples, but it's like you wonder, what should I do in this situation? Find that biblical principle. We have some issues, you always struggle with a lot. One is, of course, alcohol. How do you deal with alcohol in a different culture? I don't know how the American culture is on that. I know the Norwegian culture, it used to be Christians don't drink. I see with the younger generations now, it's they drink much more. I strongly dislike it, but I can't find a biblical principle saying that you shouldn't drink alcohol, right? Where is that in the Bible? So you have to find the biblical principle. I think it's wise not to do it. Very wise not to do it in many, many situations. But where is the biblical principle in that situation? I can tell you, we came to Azerbaijan. In Azerbaijan, it's a Muslim culture, but with lots of alcohol because they were a part of Soviet Union. So when we went to visit people as male persons, we were served two kinds of drinks. You could choose, or you got both. It's like wine and vodka. That's your options. Would you like wine or vodka? Let me see. I think I go for the wine. But then you had these small glasses of vodka, and you were supposed to say cheers the whole evening. And I came from then, at that time, a background where we didn't drink at all. It was regarded as a sin. So what do you do in this situation? Well, I took part in the social event. I emptied this vodka glass in a whole evening. The Azerbaijanis did it every time we said cheers, right? But it allowed me to take part in the event. And they asked me, why don't you drink? Because I drank so little. And my father-in-law, who's really against any kind of use of alcohol, very often we had parties outside. So he took his little vodka glass and emptied it on the ground. He was so much against alcohol. But then, as soon as he put it back on the table, he filled it up again. So here's the story. It's like after he had gone, I tell my father-in-law this. I said, after you went, people came to me and they said, why don't you drink, Steinar? You should drink like your father-in-law. His glass was always empty. Always empty. Yeah. So where clear biblical principles contradict cultural values, the Bible takes precedence. But where the Bible leaves room for flexibility, the cultural values of the local host culture should normally prevail. So then you adapt. If there is no clear biblical principle, you adapt. Is it clear? Yeah. Can you follow this, you think? Yeah? It's a roadmap. Follow the Bible. If the Bible is not clear on something, follow the local culture. Live like the locals. There are things in many cultures you can't do because you follow the Bible. But there are many things you can do because the Bible is not clear on that issue. So it's a good roadmap if you can follow this. If you remember only this thing when you go to a new culture, you remember the most important thing. Okay, we have cultural components, and we have values, manners, customs, beliefs, worldviews, ceremonies, rituals, laws, ideas and thought patterns, language, and the list is much longer here. Art and artifacts, tools, social institutions, and it's just to show that culture is very, very complicated, and that makes it difficult for us to maneuver. So, and some important orientations or aspects we have in cultures is like we have time-oriented cultures and event-oriented cultures, and American culture is probably time-oriented, isn't it? Does it apply to the whole of US?
Most of it.
Yeah, maybe not Hawaii. I don't know. It applies to most Western cultures. But then you go to non-Western nation and they are very event-oriented. So the event takes precedence. If you have a good time, you continue to have that good time until the good time is over, and then you move to the next thing happening, right? So even if you have an appointment later on, that doesn't matter so much because now we're having this good talk, and it continues until it ends. Right? So it's a different way of thinking. Then it's related to this people versus task orientation, where in a task-oriented culture, the tasks take precedence. In a people-oriented culture, it's always people are more important than tasks. So in Azerbaijan, we from time to time went to visit a family in a village, and the mother in that family, she was working as a teacher at the local school. Every time we came in the evening, she made a phone call to the director at the school, and she said, I can't come and teach tomorrow because we have visitors. I have to stay at home and cook. But I can't come to teach, I can't do my job. And it was the understanding in that culture that that's okay. If you have visitors, it takes precedence. Yeah, it sounds good, doesn't it?
Good for hospitality.
Yeah, good for hospitality. Yeah. So whereas in my culture, it's like the tasks take precedence. You can't come tonight because I have things I need to do. We can make an appointment for Saturday night. I'm planning to take some time off. Then we can relate, right? So, Actually, I changed. I lived only 4 years in Azerbaijan, which is event-oriented, people-oriented culture, and my perspective changed. But I was a task-oriented, I was a time-oriented person before going there, and now when I do these cultural tests, unfortunately, I score equally high on both sides. And I can tell you, it's not an easy life. You're the same way, yeah?
A little bit. So a couple of keys, navigating an event time-oriented society.
Yeah.
The more important the event, the longer it's going to take to prepare, the later it's going to. So a wedding, the most important event in the life of the bride, you think about how long it's going to take her. So that's going to start 3-4 hours late. And so one thing that really helped me was, I planned to meet a friend for coffee at 4 o'clock.
Yeah.
So I think, okay, so at 4 o'clock he's going to look at the clock. He's going to, I have this meeting with Arlen, so I need to put down what I've got doing. I need to prepare, and then I need to drive. So I calculate that in my mind. Okay, it's going to take him 10 minutes to. 15 minutes, and then he's got it. So he's going to be about 40 minutes late. I can usually peg it pretty close.
Yeah.
But you kind of have to learn how to.
Yeah. The difficulty is that when you score equally high, you give priority to the events, and then you think that also you have a strong value that you should be on time for the next event, but you will be late. And same with tasks. It's like you give priority to people, and you would also like to finish your tasks, but you can't. So it's not easy to maneuver always. We had a language teacher in Azerbaijan, and I was preparing for her. Like we had private language teachers. I was preparing to meet her the following day, and then as I was supposed to prepare, we had visitors coming, and they were there with us the whole night. So no time for preparation. They came to my language teacher the following day, and I said, well, I'm not prepared. And we had visitors coming over yesterday. And as far as I understand, this is the way this culture operates. That I should give priority to the visitors. And she says, yes, that's right. But you should also come prepared. It's not easy. Group versus individual orientation. In a group-oriented culture, the group makes decisions together. Very often it could be a family or the extended family or a community. In an individual-oriented culture, it's you as the individual, you make decisions on your own behalf. Right? So, and what cultures are you from? What is the US culture? Individual, probably. Yeah? Same with the European culture. Costa Rica?
Group.
Yeah, so it's different. Nepal?
Group.
More group, yeah. So it's hard for us to understand like group thinking, but as a father, I would have appreciated if there was more group thinking in our cultures as well, because it's like you see your kids making very immature decisions, right? But we have trained them to think individualistically, and then you allow them to do that. But you would think that it would be better if we as a family could decide about this matter together. High versus low context. In a high context culture, how things are said is very, very important. In a low context culture, the only thing that matters is that you have communicated things. Low context is like an email, text message, WhatsApp message, low context. High context is if you want to confront, it's like the way it's done is so important. It's linked to the next one, direct versus indirect communication. And I struggle a lot with that in Azerbaijan because they were indirect communicating. And it's very hard. It's like, how do you deal with people when they don't perform the way they should at work in an indirect communicating culture? How do you confront? And I did many, many mistakes, more than I can count. And some of them I studied now in CrossCultural Leadership, and it wasn't until I read the books now that I realized how stupid I had been acting, right? So yeah, it's indirect communicating culture. I think, how is that in Nepal? You're indirect communicating. Costa Rica, same thing, or?
It's in the middle.
In the middle. Yeah, in the middle. And So how do you confront people in Nepal then? If somebody has done something wrong, or let's say you're the boss and you want to confront one of your workers not performing as they should, how would you do that?
Yeah, it's very hard, yeah.
Yeah.
Especially, yeah, we also do the same thing, you know. We don't talk on the matter directly.
No.
Come up with, you know, how it's going in your family, you know, all these things, and finally we come to the point.
Yeah. So you go around like
Running around the house.
around and around, but you come to the point, to the end.
Yeah.
Yeah, at the end there. Yeah. Yeah. It's not easy, and in this indirect communicating cultures, it might be difficult to understand what people actually say. It's like we had in India, Tent India, chairman of the board. He was resigning, and I had a long talk with him before he resigned. I asked him, why are you resigning? And he shared about his vision for his life, and that it took him in a different direction, and so I didn't really understand. Is he saying that something is wrong in our organization, or is it just that God is leading him to something new? So I called my Indian brother, who is also on the board, and I said, can you call him? Because I'm from Norway, I don't fully understand indirect communication. So can you call him and ask why he is resigning? Maybe you understand more. And they had also a good talk for a long time, the two of them. And then my Indian brother, he calls me back, and he says, this is what he said. It was the same story. And then he said, but I don't know if there is something more. And I said, you have to know. He says, like, you come from an indirect communicating culture. You should know. It's not easy for me to know, but you should know. But he says, no, we don't know. It's like, we don't know. Is it the same in Nepal? It's like someone is confronting you, but you don't always know.
Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard to just like, you know, I'm working with you, but I don't like your culture or you, and I'm leaving.
Yeah.
I don't want to just directly tell you that I don't like you, I don't like your ministry.
No.
What just like I want to be very nice to you.
Yeah.
And I just come up with different story. Oh, I have some family situation or something.
Yeah, yeah.
This and that, I'm leaving the child.
Yeah, yeah.
So, unless I express myself, nobody's gonna know.
Yeah.
Why I'm leaving.
Yeah.
Even Indian. Yeah, relationship is more important. They open up with few people,
Yeah.
not with everybody.
But once again, it's connected, all things.
Mm.
When you are in direct communication,
Mm.
in general, you have a group versus individual.
Mm.
So you use your group you use other people to tell you
What is? Yeah.
So
So
it's
Yeah.
interaction.
interaction, you could, yeah.
Yes. Because we try to curb the people,
Mm.
so we don't want to offend you.
No.
So we use other channels, like a group or other people.
To communicate it. Yeah.
It's also the aspect of safe face.
Yeah.
Like you don't want to say it, you just want to give the best answer possible
Yeah.
for you to get out of the situation.
Yeah.
And it also depends of the rank of person. Like if in Colombian culture or in a lot of Latin American culture, if that person have the authority, like your father or your mother or your boss, be direct, you're allowed. Like if you tell me your performance is terrible, I will receive it because you're my boss. And you have the authority. But if a coworker told me that, it's like you're nobody to tell me that. Like you don't have the authority. So it depends.
So it depends on relationship there. Yeah.
I read a book on this once, which really wish I read earlier in my career at the Indian company, but I wonder if it's related, like that book was describing honor shame cultures versus right wrong.
Yeah.
And so they're about protecting one another's honor and not shaming one another, and I'm just like, you're wrong.
Yeah, it's a very interesting how you express yourself in different cultures like that with honor, shame. Yeah, right, wrong. It's like It's just small details in the sentences can cause either good communication or not so good communication, right? So it's good. Dichotomist versus holistic. In a dichotomist culture, it's like things are compartmentalized. But typically, it's black and white things, right? I think maybe U.S. culture is there, black and white. It's like either something is right or is wrong. It can be both. But in many cultures, you have huge gray areas that's undefined. Like they think holistically, right? We can use an example. So if for instance, your wife is pregnant and now she's giving birth, and you drive to the hospital. It's probably legal in the U.S. to drive above speed limit in a situation like that, right? Is it? Yeah. But then again, in a situation, because of the situation, you can break the law. I mean, you might be in a gray area, right? But because of the situation,
It's still illegal, but there's a little more grace.
There's more grace in the situation. Yeah, I apply this. I've stopped doing this now. I apply this when it came to reaching a ferry, crossing one of the fjords in Norway. Like, so I'm behind schedule. I'm driving too fast to reach this ferry, and I was driving far too fast. So I wasn't even in the gray area. I was totally in the black. And there was this, probably we have this kilometer per hour in Norway. I don't know how to convert it to miles per, it's miles per hour, right? But driving far too fast, but probably double the speed that was legal at that place. And then all of a sudden I see there is police. So I'm passing the police. There is never a control in Norway. It's like, so it's like for me, it's like, okay, I'm trying to catch that ferry. We didn't do it. It was only like 100 meters away. We didn't catch it, and now I see this police car pulling up behind me. And I think there are two options now. We were actually going to Christian camp. I was preaching there. So it's a stupid situation, right? So I was totally in the black area. But then I said two options now. One is I end up in prison because I drove so fast, or it becomes very, very expensive and they take my license. Yeah, that's for sure. So the policeman comes and he says, we've had traffic control here the whole day, but we had this, and we've not seen anyone coming as fast as you did.
You win.
I had only one focus, catching that ferry, no, not speed limits. So, and then he says, well, actually we had taken down all the equipment, so we didn't measure your speed. It means we can't fine you. But I want to tell you, please slow down. It says, this is just about time. You have people in your car. The car was full with kids, So I said, thank you so much. This was a very important reminder for me. But for many Christians, that is a gray area. If you want to understand the gray areas, it's like go above speed limits on the high road. It's like many Christians say it's wrong to do that, but you can go 10 miles per hour above speed limit, and it's still okay, right? It's still okay. You would be fined if it take you, maybe, but you're still in the gray area. Then we understand what the gray area is, right? It is not gray, it's black. Inclusion versus privacy. So when people come to your home, do you include them in your private life, or do you keep like a private space? One example, a man from China came to visit his boss. Actually, they were going out, but he came a little bit early to the boss's home. So he knocks at the door, and there he is. The boss is having dinner with his family. So he says, oh, you came early. You can wait for me in my living room while I finish the dinner with my family. So this is wrong, right? You shouldn't do that. Yeah. Why is that so wrong?
Well, we need to include them. How you gonna do it that way? It's disrespectful.
Disrespectful. Yeah, that's what you would feel. Yeah, so it's inclusion in situations like that. But in many families and many cultures, it's like, no, this is a family meal. So if someone knocks at the door, they will be placed in the living room waiting for us to finish the meal, right? So we could try to understand that. Spontaneous versus planned hospitality. Do you need to call to make an appointment before you visit someone, or can you just ring the doorbell? And many Western cultures are planned hospitality. You need to plan it beforehand. whereas many non-Western cultures are spontaneous hospitality. And if you've lived in a culture with spontaneous hospitality, you really miss it when you go back to a planned hospitality culture, because no one rings your doorbell. It is never a surprise. So two friends of mine, a couple, they stayed in Bangladesh, and then they moved back to Norway. And they said they missed it so much that from time to time, one of them went just outside, and rang the doorbell, and the other one opened the door and said, "What a surprise! You're there." And you miss it. At the same time, it's like living in Azerbaijan, I have to tell that I felt I lost control over my time because it was spontaneous hospitality. And I knew that if someone rings my doorbell, I have to leave everything that I'm working on and drink tea with them and talk to them for as long as they are here, until they decide to go. They even came to my office. I'm a busy guy, right? So it's like they came to my office, and I knew also in my office I have to sit down and drink tea. And what I did is had this quick tea with someone coming to my office, and then I started walking around trying to make sure that they understand that I'm a very busy man, you need to leave now. And then 2 hours later, they decided to go. And my day was spoiled, right? So it's not easy to maneuver. And also I could have told my kids, today we're going to play together. Someone knocks at your door, plan is cancelled. I need to spend time with the people who come to visit us. So it's not all easy, right? Crisis versus non-crisis orientation. In the crisis-oriented culture, you plan ahead. And it's always like, okay, our building, our house, our home could burn, so we have an insurance for that. Our car could crash, we have an insurance for that. We're building a home. Can we afford it? We will repay it in 30 years. That's planning, long-term planning, right? And in a non-crisis oriented culture, you just solve the issues as they arise. It's like, okay, we have a problem here. How do we solve it? You don't plan. Our home burns. Let's rebuild it, right? Ecuador, some years ago, many years ago actually, there was a strike at the gas stations. So some friends of mine from Western cultures, they live there. What do you do when you hear that in the news there might be a strike on the gas stations? Well, from a planned crisis-oriented culture, you fill up your gas tanks.
Or yes.
Yeah. It says you buy a lot of gas. Equatorians didn't do that. So after 1 week with strike, they couldn't drive. Only the Westerners drove their cars. It's like, and the Equatorians asked, how do you still have gas? It's like, it's been a strike for 7 days. Well, we bought a lot of gas beforehand. Okay, so that's doable. So it sounds like that is a better way of doing it, but in a non-crisis oriented culture, people are much better at improvising when something occurs. Right? They can easily find solutions. And if you come from a crisis oriented culture, you don't do that. We heard a story from a place, there was a snowstorm. This is a crisis oriented culture. So snowstorm, and electricity went off. They had wooden heaters so they could keep warm inside the home. But it took so long time to bring the electricity back that the food in the freezer started rotting. So it melted and it started rotting. So now it was on TV, food is rotting because the electricity is not back. Well, it was actually -25 outside the house. And now the food in the freezer was rotting. Can you see a solution to the problem? Well, what could be a solution? Bring your food outside your house. It will stay frozen, right? But people don't come up with these ideas because it's so crisis oriented. So you haven't thought about that beforehand.